Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Let's see, who do we have here?
At the moment, we're missing Bob, but
He's coming in now.
so we have a full house.
Full house.
Okay, so
Oh, there he
Justin,
is.
we won't seat you for the meeting, but feel free to talk
Yep.
in whatever way.
Thank you.
The minutes of October, are there any changes to the agenda, Paula?
None from me.
Okay, so I do know that we'll have something being brought up by Mr. Tabor, but we'll do that under audience of citizens. The minutes of October 12th, any changes, corrections? Make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Any discussion? All
Aye.
those in favor?
Favor.
Aye.
Okay.
Is that unanimous?
Yeah.
Any abstentions? Thank you. Next up, there is an audience of citizens. I know Mr. Tabor wants to bring something up. I need to recuse myself from this because I represent him on this potential transaction. So I'm going to turn off my video just for the time that he is making whatever presentation. I really don't want to interact with the commission at all about while he is having a conversation.
Enjoy your dinner.
I'm going to
Hello.
turn that over to Vera to conduct the meeting.
Okay, audience of citizens, who do I have on the line, please?
Hi, it's Walt Tabor, 544 Route 87, Columbia. You
Okay,
hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I can hear you fine. I don't know about anybody else, but I can hear you fine.
I sent a letter in because I kind of wanted to give as much time as I give it, as much notice as I could, so that if anyone had the opportunity to look at the regs or come up with any creative thinking. Essentially, what happened is I had approached Connie Kozlik, I'd say 5 weeks or so ago, and posed the question about an indoor riding arena. Essentially, some folks who are looking at a portion of our farm would like to build a personal use building for a personal use riding arena. They're horse enthusiasts, and they have no commercial endeavors or anything like that. They're really folks that just enjoy riding their own horses, and they want to be able to ride and exercise some very nice horses all year long. So they wanted to build a building that would accommodate that. And after looking at the regulations, I thought it required, based on what I could see, it would likely require
Calculus, he should be giving more to Joe Biden. The people of West Virginia are not going to benefit in the short term.
Somebody needs to turn their TV down.
Yeah.
Most of the infrastructure dollars go to special.
Who has the TV on?
Not me.
okay,
Not me.
it's
All
better
right,
now.
well,
So-
continue.
So essentially what had come about was I had a conversation with Connie. It was really an inquiry, because the idea of them building a building, an agricultural building to use for their own use to ride horses, didn't, to me, echo that they needed to do public hearing and talk about parking and traffic and such and such. And so I posed it to Connie, what do you think? And her immediate response was, no, there's got to be you got to have the right to ride a horse around in your barn, straight up. I mean, you got to have a right to ride a horse around the barn. Let me look into it and I'll get back to you. But she got back to me, a couple of 4 or 5 days later. She looked very intensely at the regs, and basically what she saw, it's the same thing that I did, that it looks like even for personal use, and I'm talking 2 people living in a house that have a couple of really nice horses and they want to ride their horse around in their barn, they need to, in order to build that building, they need to meet the setbacks and requirements of a commercial horse operation. And I thought, if if the regulations require that, is it I won't say is it an error, but is it designed for commercial, or is it designed for all, or what was it? And I thought I would pose it to, well, eight great minds to see what your opinion on it was, because it doesn't make sense that if you call it an agricultural building and you built a, 60 by 100 building, and you used it for your farm equipment, but then one day you decided to ride your horse around inside, just by transparency and definition, you'd have to go to public hearing, and you'd have to have your building be 100 feet from your property line. And so
Maybe Paula can weigh in on this. I don't know, we're bringing Connie into it because Connie isn't really present to help us out any. Maybe Paula can help us out.
well, frankly, Connie interpreted the regulations and the same way I did. And she said, I could actually read it to you. But she said that there is no separation between commercial and personal. So by definition of a horse arena, in the horse arena section, it would require a public hearing. And so I guess that's what brought me to the table here.
I know we've had quite a few in the past. This has been on our books from late 80s, early 90s, I think, somewhere in there, long before I was here. But I have run into properties where there are indoor riding arenas for personal use that have been approved through this process. And it's the intent, and I just pulled up the regs here, the intent of the indoor riding arena special permit. It says the intent of this section is to protect its adjacent properties from negative impacts associated with the placement of such structures, with specific consideration for impact of views, odor, noise, sanitation, and drainage. And it does require a setback of 100 feet. And it's primarily because indoor riding arenas, they're very large buildings because
Right.
horses are large.
That's true. Right.
So and screening can be required. Then it's required that a professional engineer certify that there should be no significant increase in peak runoff from the site, because you're creating a very, very large impervious area. Adequate parking shall be provided based on demonstrated need. If it's just the individuals that own it, then they would need to be able to park their own cars at their own house. So that wouldn't be an issue. And the sanitarian needs to certify. So that's what the regulations are saying. And I do know of 5 or 6 properties, and there probably are more. We have a lot of homes that have private riding arenas that were approved on that. And we have also in our regulations, if Walter is disagreeing with the zoning enforcement officer's decision, that's an application of the Board of Appeals to hear whether the ZEO has made an error in a decision or requirement. So that goes to ZBA.
So let me make it absolutely clear. I do not disagree with Connie. I do not have any challenge with her interpretation. What it comes down to is because her initial response to me was, as I did, you got to be able to have a barn and be able to ride your horse around in it without going to a public hearing, et cetera, et cetera. And if that's the case, I thought to myself, geez, maybe there's something I can put my feet on here and ask the question. And the point is that if the difference is this, if this was pardon my saying, a site plan review, by the commission, or if it was something that by, Paula or Connie's interpretation of, proximities and whatever, this meets all the requirements. It's 100 feet from the property line. It's this, it's this, it's this. Could it be approved that way? because it's an agricultural building, is the difference between 2 or 3 weeks and 3 months. Because if you're in the business of trying to sell a property and a client wants to know, can I or can't I, to go to public hearing in order to determine that it's almost unrealistic, or I would say it would be an unnecessary delay. But that being the case, the regulations calling for a public hearing, a client says, well, I got to know I can put that building there before I will close. Now we're into a process that literally takes 3 months.
I have a question.
Well, if everything meets, if they went ahead with a sale and they made application, or you made application ahead of the sale, and everything met the regulation, making full application rather than discussing this under audience of citizens, what would be the reason why they would not get it?
Well, it's not so much that, it's that the point of making application is that you're asking for permission. There's always, I mean, even if there's a 1% chance that no is achieved, then somebody's closed on a piece of real estate and they can't do what they wanted to do. I personally would feel uncomfortable about buying a property without knowing that I could get a permit for what I wanted to do. Whether it was
I have a
build a house,
question.
build a barn.
Somebody had a question?
Yeah, I do, Rich. Yep.
Okay, okay.
So the riding arena, is that any different if you built a barn and called it a stable, where you would have just as many horses, probably more in? Do you still have to go through all of that?
Actually, Rich, this is actually better yet. And the reason it is because without this building housing any animals, there is no odor. There is
I
no.
understand that. That's why I'm bringing that up. So if you had a stable that was a barn, is that, do they treat that the same way? Because,
No.
you know, there's some stables out there that are pretty darn big. If you have, you know, several horses, and you have the property, those things get pretty big. And then they house horses. Some people take care of other people's horses in those. I mean, do they have to go through the same process? So I'm just wondering what the justification is, why a riding arena is so different. I understand the roof, the runoff, and how you got to take care of the drainage. That's my question about the whole thing.
In my mind, there should be a separation between personal use and commercial, frankly.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Even if on a personal basis, you still had requirements for runoff, you still had requirements for, you know, whatever setback based on whether or not you have keeping of the animals in the building or not. But at the same time, the regulation may be something that our CEO could evaluate, you know, in the office rather than have it go to public hearing. And if it's a commercial operation that has much greater impact on the neighbors, well, then it has to go to public hearing. But something that, you know, some separation. But what makes this necessary, Rich, I guess what it comes down to is the regulations do not separate personal from commercial.
And I think I agree with you. This is for everyone. The indoor riding arena regulation is for everyone, no matter what the use is. And it's something that the regulation could be changed to separate the personal and the commercial. But that would take somebody rewriting this and another public hearing to change the regulation. So that you're back to a public hearing to change, you know, the same time limit.
Right. So I guess was looking for something we could put our teeth into, you know, and say, is this just an agricultural building that could be used for riding? Or is this a indoor riding arena by definition? And I guess it goes to transparency.
Well, where are they going to keep their horses?
Indoor riding arena is just for riding.
Yeah, the horses are kept in a totally separate barn that is a good 500 feet away from anything else.
Well, I think there's good reason. I think there's good reason partly for the regulation. I mean, for putting up a structure that's that large to go through the regular channels so that it can come under the regulation and can be on the agenda and can be out there as transparent for the neighbors to come and comment, and where are you going to put the lighting, where are you going to put the manure pile, where, you know, I mean, I don't know why there would be another way to go about this other than what we already have on the books, unless, like Paula said, if we want to, you know, change how the regulation is written. That's my question.
Well, Vera, there is no
There
manure
really-
pile associated with this building. So this is not about the keeping of the animals. It's strictly an indoor, a box of a building where somebody can go and ride their horse. It's kept meticulously clean because that's the way they are. And as far as any lighting, the lighting is inside because that's where the riding is. Whether there's access lighting or doorway lighting or something, I think that's kind of code required. But you know, it's really what it comes down to is a definite difference between a commercial operation where people are coming and going with a number of trailers and you have shows and there's people riding professionally there to be seen, and horses being dealt with, you know, whether they're being sold or showed, a lot of incoming and outgoing traffic, and the noise associated with it. But there is no keeping of the animals required, or no keeping of animals in this building.
Yeah, just to give my 2 cents, there really should be a delineation between commercial and private use, and because an arena is basically 4 walls and a roof, where you're not housing livestock in it. So if there's concern about, you know, you have to make a distinction between a barn where animals are kept and where manure piles up, and then you've got the issue with that. That's not an issue with an arena. An arena may not even be used during the week. It could be used a couple of days or you know, a week, a month, depending on. So I think if it's for someone with their own horses, it's essentially, like I said, 4 walls and a roof. And in my opinion, and to Rich's point, I think what he was making, there should be a delineation for sure.
Just to put a little wrinkle in what you've just said, maybe not in this case, but there are quite a number of arenas that have horses stalls built into the sides of the arena. So you don't have to take your horses from one barn to the other. You're just going to go out of the stall into the arena. And that's quite common now.
Yes,
I
it
believe
is.
that's something they have done at Crossroads.
Yeah, it's done very commonly. That's the uniqueness of this situation. There is no keeping of animals here. So my question is there latitude to call this an agricultural building and just say, hey, you know what, if they use it to ride their horses, they do. If they don't, then they don't, but it's an agricultural building. Is there really a
No
fuss?
different than any other agricultural building.
Excuse me?
Well, you could propose, like I suppose you could propose a zone regulation change. Write a new regulation.
May I speak, please?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't know, I did receive a letter from Walt yesterday, email from Walt explaining this, which I'm sure a lot of other people got as well. And because we received that, from a legal standpoint, we may have to read that into the minutes, or at least have it as a part of the minutes, because that is direct conversation with board members. So the public should be made aware of those statements that Mr. Tabor made. Okay, second item. I don't know if any of you reviewed the planning and zoning regs on this item. There's two sections. One section has to do with commercial horse operations. The other section has to do with indoor riding arenas. So there's a specific section about indoor riding arenas that I think everyone should read. And it doesn't have to do with housing animals and things like stables and things like that. It has specifically to do with indoor riding arenas, which are usually large facilities, larger than stables would be. So I think it's important for everyone to read that. These are on the books. We can't change that. We can't deviate from the requirements of the regulations. So Mr. Tabor has, in my mind, 2 options. One is to make an application and go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to say that he wants something that is not allowed by the regulations. The other option would be to submit something to us, which would be a rewriting of the regulations, propose a new regulation for riding arenas, in which case he could differentiate between commercial or recreational or private arenas. We've had other people do this in the past. We had it recently done for a wedding venue. So
Right.
there's another avenue to change the regulations. But right now, we have very specific regulations requiring all indoor riding arenas to submit for special permit with a site plan and other regulations. We have to adhere to that regulation. We can't deviate from it. Thank you.
Well, that's why I was kind of wondering why we are discussing it, because it's not an application. I understand, being congenial enough to, discuss anything on their audience of citizens, but not to something at great length. And I did get an email. I could not open it, so I didn't know what it was. But I guess I do now. But I think, Paula, you could weigh in again, or we could go around. I don't know what to do with this other than the suggestions that Bob just put forth. I really see that as the only options.
Okay, it's Walt Tabor again. I want to make it clear. I do not disagree with Connie, and I understand the interpretation you're making, Bob. In fact, if it's as simple as you're saying, then my approach to you was totally unnecessary. But I was reaching out for help because I looked at the amount of time that it was going to take to process this, and I just didn't know if it made sense, given that it is an agricultural building that somebody intends to ride their horse around in. That's really what it comes down to. Thank you. Yes, that's it. And by the way, I sent the letter out so that I could give you enough time to evaluate it, because I didn't want to drop it on you like a bomb at a meeting,
Walt, could you do me a favor and send a copy to the board clerk and to me?
I absolutely will. Yep.
Thanks, Walt.
So I at this point, I imagine that I will probably be in before you, or will be in before you for the application, but I just was hoping that there was some easier route that took less time. That's really what it comes down to.
Walt, is the 100-foot setback, is that the issue?
No, it's not so much the issue, because at public hearing, I guess you could request a waiver, or I don't know. I don't know what the technicality is. What it comes down to is it's the amount of time. It is that you write an agreement to sell something and somebody says, I want to make sure I can get a permit for it. It's literally 90 days to get through planning and zoning with the appeal period and all the different, you need an engineer involved, you need to get all that in order, and then you apply for a permit. So it could very likely be 4 months before somebody could get a building permit to do something. And frankly, in this day and age, you don't buy a property without knowing that you can do with it what you want. It's just one of those challenges.
Like you said, by right, you could build a building like that.
It could, but
as long as it wasn't identified as one that you're gonna be riding horses. So it's kind of a gray area, I guess.
It's really all about transparency. It's about integrity and honesty and transparency. You could try and pull the wool over somebody's eyes, or you could be straight up and go in. And that's what we're doing. So.
Okay, so we'll see your application on the agenda at some point in the near future, I guess.
Thank you very much, folks. I really appreciate your help.
Thanks, Walt.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Walt. Perhaps we could go on to number 6, unfinished business, and you could invite Rick to join us again.
I'm back.
you have a good supper?
Okay, hello.
I hope you finished dinner.
Yeah.
I did. It was good.
Oh, wonderful. I'll be right over.
Thank you for that. I couldn't in any way touch that issue. As far
understand.
as, there's nothing under unfinished business, correct, Paula?
Correct.
Okay, so under new business, we have two items. Item 7.1, which is a filing date extension for the Hop River subdivision.
Yes, our subdivision regulations stipulate that an applicant has 90 days after the 15-day appeal period to file the final subdivision plans with the town clerk. 90 days is very tight. It's sort of a number that most towns use, but it's a very tight turnaround, especially right now and with so many, the surveyors and engineers and attorneys are very busy right now. So they're not going to have everything ready for that they would expire on November 28th. And if it's not filed by November 28th or extended, then on the 29th, the subdivision doesn't exist anymore. And we don't want that to happen, I would say. So they sent in a letter asking the commission to grant a 90-day extension. And our regulations allow that.
I make a motion to accept it.
There's a,
We have a motion on the table. Do I have a second? Bob? Any discussion?
yes, I
No.
would like to clarify what the motion is.
Paula,
Okay, Paula?
It's to approve the request of Hop River LLC for a 90-day extension to file the final subdivision plan with the town clerk's office.
Rich, was that your motion?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Bob, you seconded that? Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? That would be unanimous then. Thank you. Okay, next up is Town of Columbia, item 7.2, a site plan modification to add two buildings, I would assume, to Rec Park.
Yes, we actually own contiguous about 194 acres. That's Rec Park. There's about 60 acres that are available for either the existing recreation or future recreation. Most of you probably remember, it's probably 5 or 6 years ago now, the town worked with a firm to develop a long-term master plan for Rec Park, so that we would be able to grow in the land that's there and not, 10 years from now say, why did we put a road here? Because we now need a field, right? And the road's in the wrong spot. So we worked very hard, had a lot of public meetings. I think some of you guys were there at some of the public meetings. And we've been working as funds allow to implement the goals of the plan. A key component of the master plan was to separate vehicular and pedestrian activity. And phase 1 of that has been accomplished. Another goal of the master plan was to add restrooms, pavilions, and a larger concession stand that's farther up in the higher portion of the Rec Park. And that's what this application is for. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at the files that were sent? Do you want me to pull
Yes.
up a picture? Okay.
If you could pull up the photo, you had the aerial photo that
Yep.
really illustrates it. That would be ideal, I think.
And we'll see what I can do here. I have a big screen and sometimes the big screen's not big enough.
It printed okay.
Oh, good. So everybody can see my screen?
Yep.
Mhm.
I'm cruising down.
Coming up
Should be next.
next.
Yep, here we are.
Here it is. Yep.
So the Rec Park, this is the road in from Hennequin over here. And the way the plan had been, or the way the park was laid out, is people would drive up through here, through all this activity to get to these parking areas here. And then this was parking on one side here. So it was just safety wise, it was a little concerning. So we've, over the last year or so, the Public Works Department has put in, this is a new road that comes around. If you haven't been up there, you should take a look and see what it looks like. It's a really neat spot now.
It's
And the
nice.
plan is at some point, the road would continue all around here, and we'd have some more parking and parking here for trails, because we've got a lot of trails. The town's also added this parking area recently. This 2 or 3 months ago, I think they completed that. And one of the things that we'd planned for down in here was a maintenance building. Right now, they don't have much storage for mowers and what they need to do when they're working there. So they're transporting back and forth from the Public Works garage. So they wanted to have a maintenance garage. And this was, we had a different maintenance director at the time, and I think he was looking for something a little bit larger than what the town is currently looking to do. So we're talking about putting a maintenance building, a small maintenance building here. It would just be for storage of equipment, maybe some minor repairs on the equipment, but that would be about it. And then to meet the needs of the restrooms, concession, and a pavilion, instead of having 3 separate buildings, it's all in one building right here, which is kind of in a nice central location. The building here has real restrooms, flush toilets, instead of the porta potties that we've had, and the playscape is right here. And little kids sometimes need to get to that bathroom pretty fast, so the restrooms are right there. Concession stand here, and this will be an open air pavilion where there'll be picnic tables which can be used whether the concession is open or not.
Who plans on running the concession?
It's usually some of the support groups, the parents that have businesses not businesses, but nonprofits that run the concessions. We also have here tonight Mark Volza, who's the rec director. And I saw him on the list a little while ago. And Jason Noasad is here, who's the facility manager. They can answer those kind of questions better than I can.
Okay. Who would like to speak? Any questions, or would either of you like to speak to this proposal?
I could just speak a little bit to the buildings and how we got here. So there was a lot of talk about one building and where to put it. And one building seemed like mixed use, and you don't necessarily want your maintenance facility in the center of a busy rec facility where mowers and trucks might get through.
Can you tell me who's speaking, seeing I'm on the phone?
This is Jason, the facilities manager.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we got through, and we came up with a plan for 2 separate buildings. One that's more user related, and one that's maintenance related. We were able to find that spot off to it's up off the screen at this point for the maintenance building that won't interfere with a future, if that road goes through, won't interfere with the road. So that's where we propose that, and from a cost perspective, it's a good spot right at the moment. And the pavilion will be a really nice user building where the concession is undercover. And the serving windows are facing the pavilion under cover. And from that pavilion, you'd be able to look out at almost every field in the north or in that section of it. So soccer, baseball, and softball up there. The only one that you might not see very well is the little league field down towards the bottom. The concession building will have storage for the various sports, as well as 2 restrooms and a mechanical room.
Okay.
What are the plans for the current concession building?
That building would remain as bathrooms. The concession stand could be opened at times if people want it. And the little portion that is currently considered maintenance would become storage for the various sport organizations as well.
Any
So
other
the new
questions?
restrooms would be just be in addition to the other restrooms that we already have?
Correct. They'll be in addition. They'll also be ADA compliant, and that's basically it. So there'll be extra restrooms up towards that side of the park, and they'll also be ADA compliant, unlike the ones that are there right now.
And two concession stands.
Correct. The other concession
The
stand.
old one and the new one.
Yep.
Looks nice.
Thank you.
Good facility. Any other questions, comments from the members of the commission?
It looks like a good addition, I think.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
So I'm looking at the name of the architect. It's really not a zoning question, but I'm looking at the name of the architect that came up with a master plan. And it is it Barton and
LeJudas is the surveyor that we use to design the septic tank, the septic system.
Okay.
That
Jason,
is formerly Anchor Engineering, so you've seen them a lot.
Yes.
They're the town engineering firm.
quick question for you, Jason. I noticed the concession building and pavilion are nicely designed. I think they're appropriate. The maintenance facility looks like a pre-engineered metal building type of thing.
Yes, it will be a pre-engineered metal building. The one that you saw is not exactly the one we're getting. It won't be 1 bay, it'll be a 2-bay garage. So it'll look much more like a simple 2-bay garage like you would have residentially.
Is there any way you could have the architectural part of it be similar to the concession building?
We could, but that's a cost. So I've actually designed myself a garage that looked really nice, had carriage looking doors for a town. But the cost level is a lot higher. So that'll be a discussion that I'd have to have with Mark and the Board of Selectmen as to the cost. For now, we're looking to get the site approved and at least get concrete in, and then we have to verify and really nail the building down after that. But right now, the least costly is to get a metal kit building.
Yeah, the problem I have, Jason, is as you come up the new entrance drive into those large parking lots, that's the first thing you see is the pre-engineered maintenance building.
It'll actually be in the woods. If you go up, it is staked out. It'll be in the woods. You would see it the most from when you're walking behind it on the walking path, and you'd see it the most from the entryway, which will be off the parking lot right now.
Right. You also see it in the wintertime when there are no leaves.
You'll definitely see it more in the wintertime. Yes.
So I think you should. It's not that big a building. It can't be that big an incremental cost to make it a little bit nicer looking than a pre-engineered metal building.
I agree. It is, you know, it's more costly, and it's just a matter of whether anybody wants to pay that extra amount. It will cost more, not a
Are you-
lot more.
Are you doing underground utilities?
Yes, all underground.
If you located it closer to the road, then you could build something nicer because the utility costs would be less.
Well, the utilities are all going to be coming from that building. That is the current concessions building. They'll be coming up the side of the pedestrian walk. Paula, you got it. So they'll be coming up the side, just the other side, but they'll be coming up that side, and then they'll be splitting to go to the concession
way?
building. Then they're going to cross and then go down the side of the soccer field to get out to the maintenance building. There's really no other place, even if the maintenance building were better looking, that you would put it that would necessarily drive the utility costs down. But if, you know, well, I'll make sure I mention it to Mark and the Board of Selectmen that your board would like to see something a little nicer than a prefab metal building. But you could also mention that to them as well. And I'm perfectly happy to estimate both and draw for that matter, because that's a simple building for me to draw myself.
Has funding been identified for this, or is this proposed like in the next budget year?
The funding has been approved for the concessions and pavilion, and basically we should be able to get the site work done for the maintenance building. The funding for the building itself for the maintenance building has not been earmarked yet.
Hey, Bob, just a point here. So this is a site plan review. This isn't a special permit. So we don't have a lot of subjective oversight, but I still would like to reiterate what Bob said. If we could turn this more attractive, and I think I'm comfortable relying on what you come up with as attractive, because I think you already know what he's indicating. You know.
Yes. Yeah,
It's a
I
one-time
definitely know.
expenditure, you know, once in a half lifetime or something like that. It would be so much nicer than if it was not attractive.
Agreed.
Thank you,
You
Rick.
know, yeah, I strongly would encourage them to come up with something that lends to the rest of the character we have in the whole facility. It's just a gorgeous facility, and it's a delightful plan. So that being said,
Hey, Rick, Tom,
Yes.
could we send a letter to Mr. Walter with our strong opinion on this?
a letter to whom?
Mark Walter. so
Oh,
that he
yes,
can present it.
I would. Paula, can you work with me to get a letter out the door
I will.
this week? That there was strong sentiment from the commission that we loved the plan and so on, and it was well presented. And we would strongly encourage the town to make a building that's also in keeping with the beautiful character of the overall facility. Well, I'll keep it overwhelmingly positive, but is there anyone who disagrees with pursuing this? Because if I can say that we have unanimous sentiment that we would like an attractive building, I think that would be a stronger statement from the commission. Is everyone good with that?
Do we, well, the only point I'll make is there can be, I don't know what the cost differential would be. I agree, I don't want an unattractive building, but we also have to respect what the additional cost would be.
Yeah, Jason, would you say it's under
my only-
$10,000 to make it attractive?
I would say the difference between a metal kit building versus a wood frame building with nicer siding and attractive garage doors, something along the lines of carriage doors, would probably be in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000 difference.
Sometimes just a different supplier can surprise you with a bid of something that'll look a little bit better. I had some doors replaced at his garage, and everybody told me I couldn't get what I wanted, and it was not necessarily a custom job, but took a plain, simple overhead door, which everybody told me you could not make into carriage doors. And I got the job done for less than what a regular door would have cost. So sometimes just get the means of getting the right supplier.
Yeah, the carriage doors that I employed in the last project that I did related to a garage were actually regular garage doors that were upfit to look like carriage doors. And they were about a $300 charge per door. But that was a regular good door, not a metal kit building door already. So that's already the part of the change. But also the wood framing and the on-site framing rather than you know, a kit building that's assembled in probably a day and a half.
Yeah. The other thing you're going to run into, Jason, is that the roof slope on a metal building is pretty shallow. The roof
Yes.
slope you have on the concession area is a little steeper than that. So
Yep.
I think just from an appearance standpoint, that will make a big difference if you can increase the slope of the roof.
Absolutely.
You can do that on a metal building. You can order what pitch you want.
I mean, you've got
Mr. Napolitano's waving in the background.
You've got an 8 and 12 pitch on the concession area, and you probably have about a 4 and 12 or something pitch on the metal building. So.
Well, that metal building is not representative of the exact metal building we were looking at.
I looked for an image to put out there that we wouldn't be doing anything worse than what I was selecting.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that you know, we didn't put something out there that you know, looked better than, that was not a metal building that was not very attractive. So I'm the one that chose it, and not for I chose it for its looks, but for its bad looks.
Okay,
Well, there's a lot of metal buildings that you can build that are
Yeah,
attractive.
That are
Rich
fairly
was up
attractive.
next.
Yeah.
Rich?
Yeah, I was looking at doing some metal buildings. You can build a beautiful steel building and change the facade to make them look any way.
Right.
You can get whatever roof pitches you want on them. And they have some really nice
Right.
colors and combinations. For example, Hebron's Fire Department's Company 2 is a steel building with a brick facade on it. The building looks gorgeous. So there's a lot you can do with a steel
Yeah,
building.
Jason, I don't think we were suggesting a wood frame building, but something that is not looking like a U-Haul storage facility.
Yes.
We were looking for just a dress-up package on a metal building.
Yep.
Maybe.
Well, the plan was a tan, tough rib sides, you know, siding, with a green roof at about a 6
geez.
pitch, 28 by 28 with 2 doors with, you know, so it isn't one big, what would look like a U-Haul storage door. So it'd be 2 regular, you know, garage doors like you'd see on a home, and a door on the side to get in, a man door on the side to get in. So that was really the plan, which would look better than what you're seeing. But if you want to go really good looking, we can do that too.
What's the color of the concession building going to be?
That is a wood sided building. That is a cedar building.
Okay, and then what's the roof going to be?
Green.
So that's where you're getting the tan and green for the maintenance facility?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That'll look good.
That's
That
the
won't look bad.
that's the 1970s look. Beige with green roof. Overdone.
All right, let's write the letter encouraging them to come up with something that's more physically attractive than what we saw at this meeting. That's sufficient?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Good with it? Yeah, good thoughts. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jason.
Yes. Thank you.
Mark, thank you for being at our meeting. Okay, we'll move on from this. So that being said, do we, I'm gonna go back to bear with me a second. Do we need to take action on this tonight? Do we want to approve this and just add the letter? I would suggest that we do.
I get this moving.
Yeah, Paul, I didn't check to the end of the packet. Was there a suggested motion for approving
The
this?
memorandum is, I think, page 3 or 4. It's right after minutes.
Sorry. Give me a second.
It's very short.
Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you.
Paula, can you take down your screen now? So I can,
I can. I'm gonna get back on it in a second.
there you
However,
go.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the Town of Columbia's site plan modification to add 2 buildings to Recreation Park.
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Is that unanimous? Yes, it is. Thank you.
Tom, was that you with the second?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much.
thank you, Jason. Thank you, Mark, for coming tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next up, regulation revisions. Let's go back through the list of the 4 items that we had a conversation about at our last meeting. Let's cue these up one at a time. You know, I've given a lot of thought to the recreational cannabis regulation. Paula, would you like to speak to it? I had some thoughts. I'd like to hear what you have to say first.
One of the things that I had heard was that the manufacturing of cannabis, whatever that meant, was where the odor was. And I've since learned that it's the growing that has the incredible odor. If you just Google commercial cannabis growing odor concern, you'll find umpteen newspaper articles about people having problems with the odors. It smells like a skunk. And it's a year-round odor because the grower is trying to, it's not like a in the ground crop where you have a crop or maybe 2 crops a season. You want this crop year round and you phase them. So there's, when they're in flower and bud, apparently is when the odor is worse. And they will always have a lot of the plants in flower and bud because they're cycling them through. There are ways to have, I want to say exhaust fans, but that's not right, like a cleaning mechanism that will take the odor away so it doesn't go out. But if we just treat this as a farm and let somebody put a building in, the odor can be really bad. Read some of the newspaper articles and you'll see what I was seeing. Some folks were 1/3 of a mile away and they could not be outside all the time. They couldn't be outside. Another said they smell it a mile away. And it's the states that have had this legal for a while, including California, Colorado, and a couple other Western states. But it was an eye opener for me. I didn't think that growing of it would have an odor.
So the indoor, you're saying the indoor growing, the
Yep.
smell is quite discernible outside of the building?
Yes, because they're exhausting it out.
And are there state regulations that govern setbacks to adjacent properties and such?
No, I've not read all the regulations, the new laws, I went to print it knowing that I was scanning through it and I said, it'll be much easier if I just print the new regulation. 303 pages later,
Oh, geez.
which I have not read at all. I've read some of it. Everything that I can see in there, they're very focused on, is the operator and the people that work there, have they been prosecuted for something? Is it secure from somebody breaking in and stealing the plants? That's what I can see in the laws. I can't see anything where they're concerned with any sort of a separation of distance or any odor emission requirements to limit the odor emission. I still go back to, we should have a temporary moratorium on some of this until we get to know more.
Do you know how other states have handled this, or other localities in other states
They've
have handled the
put in-
issue of odor?
They've developed their regulations requiring emission.
Well, I'm assuming that. I was trying to be more specific about how they've handled it. They just simply increase setbacks, or?
No, they require the ventilation system that filters the air before it's exhausted out. And probably setbacks as well. I've not looked at all the different towns and all the different states.
I didn't suggest that you needed to look at all of them. Have you looked at a sampling of them? Can you give us something that's more factual and more fact-based?
No,
to
I cannot,
understand?
because I've not looked for a particular town's regulations. I've just read of the problems, and I've read the companies that sell something that they say work. But the individual actual zoning regulations, I have not. Which is why I'm thinking that, I mean, it's going to take a little time to develop this, which is why I was suggesting the moratorium.
Massachusetts is ahead of us on this, so maybe maybe there's people up in Mass that we could tap to.
Yep, I will check
Information.
Massachusetts.
I wouldn't be in favor of pursuing a moratorium until we know more about whether or not there's a problem and whether there's an effective way to address it. I'd rather be somewhat open to it right now. I'd like more facts to make decisions from. I would want the commission to have facts in front of them to make decisions.
I don't know, Rick, not to respectfully disagree, but I think it's going to take a while for this to hash out. I think I'm in agreement with Paula that we should do the moratorium for a year and see how it washes out. Just being concerned for, no matter where we put it, if they're talking a third of a mile or a half mile or a mile away, I just soon wait and see what happens around the state before we get involved in it.
One
Yeah,
of the,
I don't have the same perspective, but I respect your perspective on it. What's some other thoughts from the commission?
one of the ways we could do it is have it on a yearly or 2-year basis, the approval, so that it's renewed, it's renewable, and we could review any complaints that may have been submitted and try to address it. So similar to what we're doing with the wedding venue, for example. All right, that permit is renewed, or that application approval is renewed on a yearly basis, every 2-year basis. So that would enable us, that would give us the possibility to address any complaints that may have been made.
That's in effect a moratorium, because I don't think somebody's going to make the capital investment in a large physical facility unless they know that they're going to be able to use it on an ongoing basis. So if we had limited time permits for what's obviously a specialty, industrial scale farm building, it's the same as putting a moratorium. So I would argue if that's everybody's sentiment, then going down the path of a moratorium is the same. It's the same thing. So the question is, I would like more information before we decide to put a moratorium on something, because this is the very first I've heard about noxious odors and, half a mile, third of a mile away. I'm not familiar with it. I admit that I don't know a thing about it. Rich, you were.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't like the idea of revisiting that. I think the investment is too large for that size of a greenhouse, shall we say, with ventilation. I think we should get our facts straight before we do something like that. Also, back when somebody brought up the smell, I know I've smelled pot when it was grown and it's pretty strong. I thought manufacturing would be less because that would be done, in a whole different environment and be much faster. But I'm not sure. I've never seen industrial growing of marijuana before. So, but I do agree with you, Rick. I don't want to put a moratorium just yet on it. I'd rather let us get our facts together and just get it done with.
I would suggest that we go meeting by meeting, and if there's a sentiment amongst the commission members to put a moratorium, let's quickly do that at some other point. But I'd like more information before we do that, before we shut it down. I really would. I just would like more information, way more information than what we have tonight. What we have tonight is, there were newspaper articles.
A question,
Yeah, Rick,
can I
sorry.
ask Rick a
Yeah.
question? You said
Yeah,
you
Alex?
were, you had been near facilities that had a noxious smell. How big were these? Was it an acre, half an acre, quarter of an acre, 20 by 30? What, how much of a plot gives a smelly result? That's a
I
question
think you're
for
asking Rich
Rick.
Napolitano that.
Yeah,
Rick?
Rich, that was you, Rich.
Oh, what was the question? I thought you were asking.
How
Would
big
you
of a
repeat the
facility,
question,
how big a
please?
facility were you smelling when you said it was noxious? Was it a
No,
half an
I
acre,
didn't-
quarter an acre?
No, it wasn't a facility. This is back when I was younger and they used to grow it out in the Everglades when I was in Florida.
But how big?
Probably 100 to 200 plants. Not that I had anything to do with it.
You were just an
Yeah,
observer, Rich. You were just an observer.
Sure.
Well, back in the late
Yeah,
70s, there was a lot of it down there.
Well, I lived in Pennsylvania and one of my neighbors 2 doors away grew it in his backyard. I saw it. I didn't know what it was. And I just thought it was why didn't he cut all those weeds? But we couldn't smell it.
No, it's only when it gets to the budding stage, like I think Paula was talking about, right before you harvest it. And that's when the THC and the chemicals, and it becomes oily and sticky. Not that I ever touched it, but that's when it starts becoming very strong. So
Justin, I thought you were trying to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I'll let Rich speak to that point. I have the same experience with it. I've never smoked marijuana in my life, just for the record, but I've been within 10 feet of a building that was used to grow it in California, and they had the ventilation and the blowers and everything going, and it was probably 15 to 20 feet away before you could smell it. So there is that aspect of it. But Rick, I totally agree with you. I think before we consider any moratorium, there's contemporary examples of people performing, doing this right now. I think, if there's objections or considerations to take around the smell or anything like that, or any other thing, we need to have some hard data behind it and research before we make any.
I really would, before we shut the door, even temporarily, on something. I'd like to do it from a fact-based reaction to this issue, not a general understanding like we have at this point.
I apologize for obviously I gave you an indication that I was suggesting that we do the moratorium now. I'm thinking that because it's a process to take regulations to public hearing and expensive because of the notices that you need to put in the papers, that we would be doing anything that we need to take care of in the next several months, all at one meeting. The recreational cannabis one, which would also allow and clarify the retail establishment, the multifamily housing issues that and the character and Section 3 revision. So I sort of was thinking that we were putting all that together for one package that would go to a
Yeah, we
public
didn't get to
hearing.
the other 3 issues yet.
No,
And
no,
this
I
has
realize
to do
that.
with a general more reacting to wanting to put a moratorium on something with regard to cannabis production. That's the only issue right now that I was discussing with everybody. And I would just like more data.
I will get you more
Going to go in
data.
that direction.
I will get you more data. It just, everything that I was seeing and reading made me very concerned of going into an area and developing regulations for something that we think we know how it will do, and we don't know that yet. So
Well, I think the question is whether we want to develop regulations that are specific to this operation if we feel there's a need for those regulations in the first place. I don't want to just make the assumption that we need regulations until we know more about subject.
Gesundheit.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
that's the point that I'm trying to make. If we want to put a moratorium, that's one question. Question is, what regulations do we need? And if we feel we need some rather involved regulations, then a temporary moratorium until we have regulations may be advisable, but we're not even at that decision point from my perspective. And I don't just want to say, oh, it's recreational marijuana production, we have to put a temporary moratorium in place of 1 year or 2 years or whatever it might be, and then we'll figure it out. Let's figure out where we want to be with regard to a moratorium based on facts, not based on what we have to this point. And I don't think we have enough to make a decision to this point.
And I don't have, the other issue is just my time with dealing with all of the new regulations and laws that have come out. I'm hoping I can take care of all of this.
I don't think we're asking for an exhaustive research,
No,
other
but
than we're trying to
the-
get an idea. The point you made was that you felt there was an odor discernible a third of a mile, a half a mile away from an indoor facility that grows marijuana. I think finding out if that's in fact the case, I don't know anything about this.
I did research on it. I felt that it was the case, and I felt very cautious about it for Columbia.
And I don't feel the same. I feel that
Okay.
we should put prohibitions on things that we have factual knowledge.
Okay, all right. I mean, I'm here, I'm staff to you guys, so I will
Understood.
do whatever you're asking me to do.
Rick,
Does
what do-
everyone
what do
agree
we-
to that
Rick,
course
Rick,
of
what-
action? I know you don't agree with that, Tom. You think there should be,
Well, what,
some-
my next question is, what happens if somebody applies for a permit to do this at this point in time?
They can't until July.
Okay, so
So
we
the
have 9
moratorium,
months.
yeah, I wasn't suggesting a moratorium today or tomorrow. I was just, I just feel we need to be very cautious. And I went right to the word moratorium, and I apologize
Right.
for that.
I think that the worst possible thing would be to, well, not the worst possible thing, but I think we should take action based on facts. And if anyone on the commission wants to bring some of that information forward for us to have, that would be also welcome. But I don't want to shut down something that may not be a problem.
Okay, well, you're saying we have 8 months to gather
Figure it
the
out.
information.
Get it right.
We require.
So I would like to know if there's problems with facilities. It could be facilities larger than a certain size. I mean, if you're talking about a 400,000 square foot building in California that has odor discernible from a quarter mile away, I don't know that we have enough land to have a 400,000 square foot building in Columbia. So the point being, what are we dealing with? That there's odor outside of buildings. Is that accurate? Is it not accurate? If it is accurate, where was it observed and on what scale?
It appears to be very accurate, especially and there's an awful lot of companies that are demonstrating how they have the proper ventilation system to eliminate that odor. But I'm worried about writing regulations that are super tight, that are not going to cause a problem in Columbia based on the regulations that I draft.
And I would like to do the same based on information.
And I said I will work on getting that information.
Okay, thank you.
And is that a priority to the other things that I need to be doing? And I will do it.
But I think we can decide that toward the end of the meeting.
Okay.
I'm going back to the next, the affordable housing plan. What do you have there for us, Paula?
I've done nothing on that since our last meeting.
Okay, then let's pass over that for the time being.
What I
mean,
planned on doing was having these items stay on the agenda so that we don't lose track of what we have.
I think it's a good plan. Same with multifamily housing. I think we already permit accessory living units on single family lots. If, if we feel that that's sufficient, weighing in at some point in the near future on that would be helpful. That's item C. And we know that we need to change the word character in our regulations
Right.
so that
Yeah.
it's a matter of wordsmithing. It's not a matter of agreeing, I think, or disagreeing. We're just not allowed to make decisions based on that word now.
Right, correct, which if we don't change the regulations but never make a decision based on that word, we're fine. It still would be good to get them out
But I
of there.
think that's an easy wordsmith.
Right,
so as
right,
far-
that's done already. It just needs to be packaged together for a public hearing. The multifamily housing, you may feel you don't want them or need them, but according to the new laws, if we do not have a place in town where multifamily is legal, then it can be anywhere in town, literally anywhere in town.
So think of multifamily as not just duplexes, because our current regulations in in a
Yeah,
residential zone allow for an accessory living unit. I think what Paul is talking about is 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 units on a lot. But state sanitary regulations preclude large numbers of living units on a single lot, correct, Paula?
they don't preclude them. They require a different approval process, which takes more time. But the state does allow that.
So if somebody wanted to build something like, what's the name of the over 55 living facility on Route 87 there behind Town Hall?
Dartmouth Village.
Dartmouth Village.
I always want to say Whitmore, Dartmouth Village.
So
So
Dartmouth
something like that could be built anywhere in town.
So something like that, provided they had enough septic capacity to meet state regulations
Correct,
and an adequate water supply.
correct.
What's the commission's perspective on that? I would think right now, making that a higher price, is that enacted as of January 1?
I believe that one's January 1.
So maybe we should prioritize looking at that in more depth and whether or not we want to create some areas within town where that type of approach would be acceptable. Rich?
How much land do we have that would be available for something like that right now?
There's quite a bit, actually.
Well, you did the chart on that last time, didn't you?
Yes, which I
It's in
can
here.
share my
somewhere.
screen again if it's in the packet again. There's also, we were looking at, or I suggested that you look at the CM1 zone, because that's commercial zone along Route 6 and 66 East. And there's a lot of undeveloped commercial property that's bringing in very little tax dollars at this point. And it's an area that could possibly have soils because it's gravelly along there because of the glacier and where the Hop River goes through there. Drainage could possibly work there. So could bring in some tax dollars. It could convert some undeveloped, underutilized land.
Oh, I got another question. So if you want to, that's the commercial zone, right? You're
Correct.
talking about? So now if you put residents in a commercial zone, don't you start getting conflicts when somebody wants to do something commercially there with lighting, traffic? Isn't that going to create more conflicts
Well,
for business?
the size of the property for multifamily could be fairly large. You could require 20 acres. You can require separation from the neighboring property line so that, and the density doesn't have to be that great. It can be a
No,
fairly,
no, I'm talking about, so if a commercial establishment wants to build a building and put a business in, now they run into issues because there's residential technically next to them. Now they can't have an illuminated sign. There's a lot of other things. You start looking at traffic, you start looking at noise. I mean, I've seen that happen with several businesses with a house being the next property over or across the street. I just get nervous about creating more conflicts with us for other uses in those zones.
I think you
Yeah, but
can
Rich,
have,
if you don't do it, Rich, they can put them anywhere.
I know. I'm just bringing up a point that can happen when you do it in a commercial zone. Now you got more residents in a commercial area, which makes it more difficult on the commercial use of that property.
except that we're the ones that would be writing the regulations that say it's okay to have residential and commercial next to each other.
I know, but when a commercial building goes in next to a residence, they're the ones that get stricken with the restrictions being the first property in.
The
That's all
commercial
I'm
is,
saying. Yeah, I've seen-
Let me play devil's advocate. Let's assume for a moment that the most ideal location from a resident standpoint is something like the Middleman Field that the Rams now own, to have a multifamily structure there, because it's cheap to develop, I think. I don't know that. Would we want to see something like that in the center of town there? A larger building with 8, 10, 12, 14 units, multiple buildings? Or from a planning standpoint, where would we like to, if we're going to allow multifamily structures, where would we want to see them? So Paula brings up a valid point. Yeah, do we want to see only those types of structures in a more commercial setting, where, feeling almost like a mixed use approach to use of that property, as opposed to in a purely residential area? Or back to, even though the center of town is zoned residential, it's not residential. There's so many different things going on there.
I don't have a problem with putting a multifamily in a commercial area. My problem becomes where if you have a commercial building, now they have lit up parking lots. Now the back sides of those tenant buildings have lit up parking lots, and you start getting complaints. Or the business goes until midnight.
Well,
I mean, we've seen where, businesses, they question whether trucks will be coming in at night because there's now residents nearby. Columbia Ford's had that a couple times. That's just where I'm trying to eliminate those
I
battles.
understand. Well, let's not get into where, let's get into whether we want. So multifamily housing, do we want to pursue creating an environment where there are places within town that you can build 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 32 units of housing that would most likely not be condominium? It would most likely be rental apartment, but we don't know the ownership structure, and we don't really cover ownership structure within zoning. Is that something that we want to put some time and energy into? And is that a higher priority right now over the next 5, 6, 7 months over looking at the cannabis production potential for control?
It is only because we can be caught with our pants down and have them coming in and, what's that big park that's on the lake that may sell one day, the camp on the lake, and they want to put them up there. I know that wouldn't make a lot of people too happy.
Well, part of the research into this is understanding what the potential maximum density of living units are per acre given ideal land, and how much ideal land there is out there, and how much you can put on something slightly less than ideal from a septic standpoint. There's a learning curve here that I think we need to pursue so that we can make some intelligent decisions about knowing what a potential development might look like, and then where we want to see that.
I think there's an economical aspect to it as well, Rick. The cost of the land is going to drive some of these potential projects. They're just not going to be viable on land that's expensive. Most of these projects will go where land is less expensive. You can do a well, you can do a septic system, whatever. You also have to amass a certain amount of property to get a certain amount of units to make it work. So, you know, to say that it's going to go in the middle of Isle of Woods or something like that, it's not going to happen because the property is too expensive. It's just not going to. It's not going to work unless somebody deeds a good size of property for free to somebody, a developer that's going to do a nonprofit or something like that, which is really far-fetched. You know, the economics isn't going to work. The septic's not going to work. The well's not going to work. Just there's a lot of things that already exist that are going to preclude any of this from happening.
Agreed. Agreed. I don't see a lot of pressure on this. I'm quite frankly, I'd like to see people finding a little more affordable way to live in a rental unit and stay in town if that's what they want. But it's hard when you have septic and well, and the development cost is huge in a country environment versus an urban environment with city sewer and water supply.
I mean, if a potential project was large enough, they'd have to have a sprinkler system. And I mean, just talk about storage tanks and jockey pumps and sprinkler systems and things. I mean, just that's prohibitive because we don't have the infrastructure.
You would have to do cisterns or something, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
I've done
But
it on
it's-
housing projects. So
Currently, we have
The big developers want to plug and play. They want to plug into electricity, plug into sewer and water and go.
Yeah.
I don't feel there's a great deal of pressure for these very reasons, for somebody purchasing land and building multifamily housing other than senior housing, which we allow, you know, in town. But I also don't want to be on the watch because we don't have regulations allowing them somewhere, that something could go in somewhere.
So I think the point, Rich, go ahead, I'm sorry.
You know, they do make smaller ones. If you drive down 87, I believe it's in Lebanon, they have some like 3 to 6 unit ones heading down towards Franklin on the left that aren't very big. You know, those are the ones that you might end up getting in town. You know, 3 to 6 families, they're set up like townhouse ones. I think it's on 87. I've seen a couple of those set up.
It is.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So that's the kind of multifamily housing you might get out here, if anything.
What's the timeline? At what point are we liable to be having, at what time do we have to have an answer to this question before somebody could just come in and put them anywhere?
January 1, was that it?
I think it's January 1. The new statutes, some was immediate, some was January, some was next July. And it's because there's like 15 or 20 of them. My brain just can't remember.
I think it was October 1st, actually.
October 1st for the
Yep.
multifamily?
I believe that's what you said last time.
Yep.
Yeah,
This year already?
yes.
Yeah, it's already in
Oh,
effect.
so it's in effect. Okay.
Well, it seems like then that should make this a higher priority than some of the other things. It says we have a liability here theoretically.
Right.
And I think,
Go chronicle order here.
Right now, there's such a boom in demand for rental units. Somebody could come in with some sort of 6-family approach on a otherwise not completely usable 5-acre parcel and plunk it in a residential neighborhood. So my inclination would be to make this the higher priority of the 4 items on the agenda that were there and just try and dig into this. I mean, let's face it, if there's a good place for it, great. But if there's a bad place, we don't want to see it in a bad place, meaning out of harmony with what's around it. And it could very well be that we want it on the edges of a commercial district or in a commercial district, or maybe there's only certain areas within town. If we take action to say it is allowed in this area, in this RA zone, then we're protecting from them being plunked anywhere. And so maybe coming up with an identifiable portion of the RA zone where it would be allowed, and having some definition of the scope of what is allowed, or a way to evaluate. I think putting time and effort into that it should be our higher priority. Everyone agreed with that?
You had about 6 or 8 locations, right, Paula?
I
That
had,
potential.
yeah, there's, in the commercial district, yep.
Yeah, it was 14, but there were 6 that had potential to do it.
There were 14 there. There
Right,
were
total.
11 that are at least 10 acres.
Yeah.
8 that are 15 acres and 6 that are 20 acres.
Yeah, but I think there's like 8 that you said, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that had potential.
Yes, yep. Some of
So
them
what-
are limited by access issue, which doesn't mean that you wouldn't
You
include
can't,
them
that's
in the
more
zoning.
expensive. Right,
Would,
right.
but they may be large lots, but they're limited by wetlands or access into them. Some have steep terrain. But some of them are potential, and they are decent size. They seem like the soil types may allow well and septic.
So let me suggest this. Let's formally make multifamily analysis as a commission our higher priority, and let's allocate time at our next meeting to go right into that under exploration. And Paula, what I would ask is, I think the first decision point for the commission should be, do we want to expand beyond your recommendation of being in a CM zone to allow it also, or just in portions of an RA zone? That would be the likely first path of analysis. And then the next path would be coming up with, well, what do realistic, fairly compact regulations? I always say compact because I'm trying not to rewrite the book, but fairly compact regulations that we might consider that would have the potential to, at least for a time being, let us define where these might occur. Rich?
Is there any chance we could get it highlighted on a map, the properties that are most feasible?
Yep, I've got.
I'm a very visual person.
Yep.
And I
Yeah,
can
that's
see
a
how
good
things-
idea. Thank you.
I do have that. I would hesitate to do that to point them out specifically. I mean, the chart that I gave you does have the
Map and lot.
map
Yep.
and lot. So the information is there. And I have a map that I had at the meeting last week, which I don't have with me. I had it ready last week or last 2 weeks ago. But I do have that. But the draft regulations that are in the packet are a pretty darn good look at regulations that can be tailored, I tailored them to meet the town's needs in terms of not having an enormous complex, not having something that could be, impactful of the commercial property next door or potential commercial property next door.
So those
The
were
space
pages.
is required. Sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that the regulations are in place, we allow them, they're reasonable. And if somebody builds them, we'll be happy instead of like, oh darn, look what we've got. So they put in separation, they also, from an affordable point of view, you'd be able to also, if you wanted, have density bonuses if some of the units were deed restricted as affordable, which that would be up to the developer to make that decision.
So let's.
Paula,
These are pages.
is this
18.
the zone that has some residents on the opposite side of Route 6?
Yes, yeah.
Let's get into this at our next meeting. It's pages 18, 19, and 20 of our packet. It's labeled page 1, 2, 3 of the proposed regulations. let's everybody focus on those for the next meeting for our project. We also, and then let's talk about this. And as far as the map, how, Paula, if you could prepare a map as Rich requested, call it underutilized commercial land in town, okay?
Okay, will do.
We'll just call it that. Don't attach any label to it, whatever
Okay.
that might be.
Okay. And I may have it here if you want to
Yep,
look
we're not
at
gonna
it
get
tonight.
into it tonight. We're
Okay,
already long
okay.
enough in the meeting.
Okay, all right.
You guys ready to move on to the end of the meeting nearly?
Sure.
Okay,
Deal. Sounds good.
all right. Thank you. This is very good, Paula. Let's see, in terms of section 8.2 and 8.3 on the agenda, we'll pass over those. Anything you want to bring up, Paula?
No, nothing with the new changes, we're not going to be looking at subdivision regulations for a while.
We aren't, correct.
No, just,
So anything under communications and reports? Nothing?
No, wait a minute. I'd like a ZEO report. Are we gonna be getting one of those soon?
We don't have one this evening. Let's put the request
No, I know
in
that.
through Paula. Paula, we would like a
Okay.
ZEO report from Connie, please.
I will get that request out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything open discussion, commission? Anything anyone wants to bring up?
Nope.
Audience of citizens, do we have a citizen here? There's no reason to go into executive session. There's no updates there. So I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Before we do that, Rick, one last thing, just to reiterate, that email that went out to us from Walt Tabor should be made a matter of public record,
Okay,
because it was sent to 6 or 8 of us or whatever, so.
I never got one.
Yeah, there were
okay.
6 people, I
Flo,
think.
could you take that letter and make it part of the minutes of this meeting, please?
I will.
And then if you could email it out to the entire commission as a PDF document, so it's easily readable. It came in a proprietary Apple format that I could read on my Apple phone, but I couldn't read on my desktop computer. So if we could get that as part of the record, that's a good point, Bob, thank you. But make sure it's in, and if you need help converting it, I'll go to work on that. Okay,
I will.
thank you. So I'll make, I made a motion to adjourn. Did I have a second?
Second.
Bob? That was the first hand I saw. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
That prevails. That looked unanimous to me. Thank you, everybody. Good evening.